How are you doing in this long build-up to the draft, Mark?
Honestly, it hasn't felt like an off season. It's just been one thing after another. I mean, last week we were in Florida at the owners' meetings, get home, and we meet with the entire coaching staff on Thursday and Friday. Busy free agency, and on top of that, we have a 6th-round quarterback who essentially requested a trade. So it's just been, no lack of storyline so far.
And Phil Perry just noted a couple minutes ago that Vrabel said last week, Mark, when you were there, I write a letter voluntarily to the players to make sure that they voluntarily read it and voluntarily show up today, which starts that, right, with Christian Barmore. And I would say if you don't come to this one, I wouldn't come to training camp either or any other camps if you're a Patriot, right?
Yeah. There's sort of like a new sheriff in town with the Patriots. I mean, you have to get on board if you want to stay on board. And I think we sort of saw that with Joe Milton. There's a reason they traded him before today. He didn't want to be in New England. And if you don't want to be here, Mike Vrabel doesn't want to coach you, and he doesn't want you to be here. So, yeah, right now, the offseason workout program, it's essentially conditioning right now. It's strength and conditioning, but guys can get into their playbook. Josh McDaniels can actually talk with Drake Maye about his offensive system, which is new. And for guys like Christian Barmore, it's huge. You get in, you actually start to work out, and hopefully the Patriots can get a resolution on Barmore, because I still think there's some uncertainty about his medical clearance when it comes to actual football. But that's huge, and it's fun. It's like not real football, but it's starting. We see the light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, let's back up on Joe Milton here for a second, though, because you say if you don't want to be in New England, then you're not going to be in New England, then, and that's fine. But is that the case with Joe Milton, or did he want to be in New England, but he wanted to have a more legitimate shot at playing quarterback here in New England? Because those are two very different things.
Yeah, that's a good question. He didn't feel like he would be getting a legitimate shot to compete. For that reason, he wanted out of New England. He at age 25, he wanted to be on a team that would allow him the best opportunity to play, and he didn't see that at all with Drake Maye being 22 and the number 3 overall pick. So he made it very clear that he wanted to be somewhere else, because he honestly didn't think the Patriots wanted him competing with Drake Maye. As a competitor, that's how he approached it. So I guess if he thought there was a realistic opportunity that he could compete for the starting job, sure, he would have stayed in New England. He didn't think that was the case. Joe Milton, as my colleague wrote yesterday, he thought he could beat out Drake Maye, and that's how he's approached it, I think, probably his entire career. He thought he could beat out Drake Maye and be the Patriots starting quarterback, and he wanted out because he didn't think they would allow that to happen. Now, might be delusions of grandeur, and we'll see if he actually gets to compete against the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and Dak Prescott. But essentially, he wanted out because of what I stated. And interesting, guys. Interesting that a 6th-round pick has that type of pull. But hey, man, he wanted to go somewhere else, and they acquiesced.
Okay, so a little bit more about this, though. Like the notion that he would somehow be a problem, for wanting to play and for wanting to compete for the job, and that somehow blocking and interfering with Drake Maye's process. If Mike Vrabel is the hard ass leader that we believe that he is, and he liked Joe Milton in any way and wanted to keep him on staff, how is Mike Vrabel not able to go to him and say, "Look, Joe, you're 3rd on the depth chart right now. Now, if you want to make a run at the backup job, that's one thing, but in order to be here and to play here and to have a hope at playing here more, you got to realize that this is the situation." Like, shouldn't Vrabel have been able to impart that to him?
I guess in a perfect world, yes, and then you let him play in the preseason and you trade him for more than, a 6th-round pick, essentially. I think starting this off with a new system with Josh McDaniels, they wanted to do best to support Drake Maye. And I'm not saying Drake Maye can't compete or he was scared of Joe Milton. I think the best thing for Drake Maye would probably be to have a supportive quarterback room with Josh Dobbs, as opposed to someone who thought he might be better. I guess I go back to like the Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi thing. That relationship was not good. And Bailey thought he was better than Mac. And it created an awkward dynamic in the locker room, in the quarterback room, where the two quarterbacks wouldn't even watch film in the same room. Kind of petty, if you ask me. But I don't think the Pats did right by Mac in a lot of different ways, going back to Matt Patricia, but also putting sort of Bailey Zappi in that room. It wasn't a good dynamic for a younger quarterback. And I think if you're going to support Drake Maye, you have to take Joe Milton out of the equation because, I don't think there's any question to the Patriots who their starting quarterback is. I don't even think there's a question that Drake Maye would beat out Joe Milton. I think they just wanted sort of a potential bad situation out of there. They want everything to run smoothly going here forward, especially starting with a new program.
Along those lines, it seems along what we see and hear that Mike Vrabel really is kind of separating himself from a lot of things from last year, and it's just he wants to create his own culture down there, and whether or not that played a part in Milton, exactly what you're saying, Mark, it might be all part of it too. It just seems that I'm starting from day one. This is my team. This is how we're going to do things. I don't want any distractions. If you're either on board or you're not, and that's what I need from all 90 of you guys as you come into camp.
Yeah, it's interesting. All the leaders that have left this offseason, right, or either been released or signed elsewhere. David Andrews, Juwan Bentley, Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, just guys who other players in the locker room really counted on for leadership, and Mike Vrabel has really wiped that slate clean. I mean, they brought in multiple guys who have been captains. Robert Spillane, Marcus Epps are both captains for Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, but he's really, really starting with this new base foundation of, all right, I'm going to bring in my own veterans, new leaders, and the old leaders are out. I'm going to do it my way. I guess I kind of like it better than what the Patriots did last year with Gerard Mayo, right? I mean, their offseason acquisitions were essentially re-signing their own players. Well, trying to re-sign players who were leaders under Bill Belichick was different with Gerard Mayo and his leadership style. Mike Vrabel knows what he wants, right? He's I don't want to call him stubborn, but he knows how to get from point A to point B and the type of players that are going to work in his program. So I think it's a good thing they're getting guys to be on board, and they've identified certain type of styles, leadership to sort of start anew here, a new chapter in New England.
Before the NFL draft arrives, and maybe they find one in the NFL draft, maybe even take one in the first round, the Patriots have one really good wide receiver, but he's coming off a major injury. You spoke to Stefon Diggs and his therapist, and they are shooting for week 1 of the regular season. Do you think that's going to happen?
I'm hesitant to say it's going to happen. I mean, in an ideal situation, yeah. I mean, yeah, the physical therapist I talked to said, 14 years of doing this, and he hasn't seen anyone, progress like Stefon Diggs. Diggs is just we've heard about his fire and his competitiveness, and I guess it's been that way in rehabbing. I mean, he's working out with a group of people that include CeeDee Lamb and Rashee Rice is also coming back from a knee injury, and a lot of NFL players. And my understanding is he's been a leader, among that group, but he's definitely progressing and ahead of schedule. And the key is to keep him ahead of schedule and get him ready for week 1. I'm always hesitant. You're over 30. You suffered a torn ACL in week 8. I think if you're the Patriots, you do everything you can to preserve that he's with you as long as he can be this season. And if that means missing week 1, it should mean missing week 1, right? It's more important to have him down the line here than rush him back. So I think me being pessimistic would probably say no. But if you ask Stefon Diggs, his physical therapist, all his team, they're saying yes. So we'll see about that.
Josh McDaniels spoke a lot about the language of his offense and how things are going to be as he takes the helm here. You have any concerns, Mark, about the ability for Drake Maye to make the transition? Again, we've seen this with the Patriots a couple of times here over the last few years. Brand new quarterback, you change offensive coordinators on him. Any hesitation, trepidation, or is this just going to be all signs point to this being a much different situation, say, from going from OC number 1 to OC number 2 that we saw under Mac? Feel better about this one, but do you have any worries about the new language and the new offense that Drake Maye is going to have to learn?
If I didn't know Drake Maye, I would say yes. But what I was told about him last year was the thing that surprised coaches was how smart he was and how fast he processed everything. He picked up what Alex Van Pelt wanted faster than they thought he would. And that was at age 21, 22, coming out of, North Carolina, running like an air raid offense. So because of that, I think he's going to be great. And I think also Josh, the way Josh worked with Mac, I mean, he was in his headset, right before the play, sort of dissecting and telling him everything. Like Mac Jones had the answers to the test because Josh McDaniels was in his ear. And if Mac Jones played like that in 2021, I fully expect Drake Maye to be better, right? I mean, Josh is probably one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL, and he's going to work with Drake Maye to also fit some stuff to his playing style. Like, obviously, a much, much different prospect than Mac Jones was. And I think we'll see him tweak the offense a little bit to fit Drake Maye's athleticism. But I think he'll be there every step of the way, and it's going to be a good thing ultimately.
The draft coming up in 17 days. What do you continue to hear about the Patriots? A lot of mock drafts coming out, different players, depending upon who gets drafted 1, 2, 3. Mike Giardi has a draft out now where he has Jalon Walker going to the Patriots 4th at a surprise pick, and then trading up in the first round to take the kid from Oregon, the offensive tackle Connolly.
Yeah.
So what are you hearing about what might you think the Patriots do as we get closer to the draft now?
Yeah, when I was at the owners' meetings last week, the thing I heard was that there's almost no chance that Travis Hunter falls to 4. It seems like Cleveland likes him, the Giants like him. I don't see that happening, and I think unfortunately for the Patriots, I don't think the Browns or Giants are dumb enough to pass up Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. It's sort of shaping up to be that way. So for the Patriots, it really comes down to who do you like better out of Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Javon Walker. It's not an ideal situation. I know there are people inside Gillette Stadium who like Will Campbell. I know there are people who believe he's a left tackle from day one. For that reason, I would predict Will Campbell's a Patriot. But I'll be honest, guys, I don't know if they like Will Campbell more than Mason Graham or Javon Walker. I know there are people who like him, but I don't know the draft board, which really adds a lot of intrigue to this, right? Because if Will Campbell is at the top of your draft board, then fine. He's a need and it fits. And one thing we asked Mike was how are you going to approach drafting need versus best available? And he said to us, well, I hope that matches up. Well, if it's going to match up, then it's Will Campbell, right? So I'm still riding my Will Campbell train, but you can convince me that Mason Graham at 4 and then trading up in the end of the first is the best thing to do. Well, I've talked to coaches and scouts who really, really like Mason Graham from other teams. It's if Mason Graham is the best player, they should draft him. But you can't come out of day 1 or day 2 without a left tackle. It's imperative. So if it's me, I'd probably still stay on my Will Campbell train. I'm kind of locked into that take, but man, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
All right, Mark. Good stuff as always from Mass Live. Mark Daniels covering the Patriots and all things football. We appreciate the time, Mark, as always.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.